welcome back to another Backyard Professor Chess video. I have a wonderful instructive game. I want to jump right on this because there's a lot of stuff I want to show you in this. And it's a great game. I'll explain a little bit about it to you as we get going. Knight f6, bishop f4. That's the telltale sign of the London system. And this is a London system game. e3, bishop e7, typical opening, bishop d3, yep, that's London. He castles early into London usually. And then we get to knight b to d2 and the b6 pawn push because he wants to fianchetto the king, or the bishop. And then we have the telltale sign of knight e5 and bishop to b7. So this game was played by Tu Huang Thong and Pham Hoa. They played it in Hanoi in 2009. I got this particular game out of Cyrus Lakdawala's book, Play the London System. This is one of the fun games to read the board, as they all are, because as we practice we get better and better and better, which improves our chances of winning. What we're seeing here at this point is hints. Let's look. The center is, the pawns are nice pawn chain here. Nice pawn chain here. Where are the pieces going? We see this bishop going up to here. We see this bishop going up to here. We see this knight on a beautiful central outpost hitting the f7 and g6 and h4 and f3 and d7 and c6 squares, a well-posted knight. And we see a queen who can come up to h5 if this guardian of the king wasn't here. So we're getting clues. These are clues to what kind of game white is going to show us. We think it's going to be a kingside attack. Were you to set up your board like this, were you to see your opponent putting his bishops on the d6 square and out here and on a knight on a central outpost with a queen at an angle toward the king side that's open, you ought to at least be ready for a kingside attack, because that is all the indications. Fair enough? Okay. Quit elaborating and show us the game. Okay. You want chess? I'll give you chess. Queen f3. Now, there is no question about it. He has shifted his power to the king side. Therefore, we are safe in assuming it's a kingside attack. This is the dead giveaway. We have plenty of hints, really, but this is it. Now, black, with the way he has opened, and he does push c5. Now, this reaction helps us gather that black sees it's a kingside attack, and you go, how on earth would you know that? Well, as a general rule, the received wisdom, something Fisher did an enormous amount of, and he was terrifically successful because of, when your opponent attacks a wing, you hit back in the center. Now, he doesn't have a lot to do toward the center on the king side. So he pushes the c5 and he's hitting the center. That is a good response. It also builds queenside space. Thanks to the knight, as the outpost, we can see centrally white has more space. So this response that hits the center and expands gives black more queenside space. Now, if black is going to do a queenside on this, he had better boogie, man. He had better hustle. And I mean fast. Here's the problem. Based on what very little I know about chess, the pieces here can advance much faster toward the king, the black king I should say, than the pawns can advance on the queen side and cause a disruption. The piece activity on the king side in black looks limited. The piece activity on the queen side for black again looks limited. This bishop is hitting granite, right? True, great pawn chain. But I mean, when you've got a bad bishop, brother and sister, you got a bad bishop. And black has a bad bishop. That's the other reason why the c5 advance is so good. Is because if he can get rid of this guy can expand. But you take this, and this is going to take its place. So the value of the fianchetto bishop in this particular style, gently, ever so gently, the value of that bishop sucks. So, let's keep going here. The response of white is c3. The best response. Because as white, you do not want to give up that pawn. In all essential purpose, were he to take, you will retake and keep that guy right there. The beauty of this outpost is the knight blockades that little pawn right there. And black's knight is keeping the F pawn from expanding. So black is just sort of stymied. And that's important for white. For all intents and purposes, black is playing a piece down. That bishop really doesn't work. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So, what was I lying about now? Oh, yeah. Now, the knight does come out and challenge the knight. Of course. No question here. No question. This is strong. This you don't just let him have. No how. No way. 9, not Nimzovich, nil, no. That is a good challenge. Yes. However, the other consideration, I think he did it right, but Queen C8 can't be all that wrong either. Because now there's tension here in the center. Yes. And so this was another possible option, but black chose this, which is decent. It's doable. Well, Queen H3. No doubt about it. This is pure, unadulterated kingside attack. When a player pushes a major power, a queen or rook, in a lift, and then over to the H-file. It's not because he wants to go pay this bishop over here a visit. He really doesn't give a flying flip about those 3 pawns. Yeah, there's nothing on the queenside. This is pure kingside. We can see that. Enough goofing off. Absolutely. So here we go. And not to mention that Queen H3, C4. Oh, yes, yes, yes. Okay. Terrific pawn chain, sincerely. That's awesome. It would have been fantastic had he been able to swap out his bad bishop first before making that kind of a pawn chain. True, it does limit the bishop, the white bishop, on the white squares, and he does bump down. He bumps down. Watch. Just observe. This is okay, but it's not as good. He wants to move it down here. Is you'll get your little finger cut off for torture. That's wrong. Just wrong. This is so-so. This is really nice because we're in a kingside, and he definitely wants to hit that, and the queen wants to hit that H7. The knight is going to be hitting here and here. The other bishop is going to be hitting H6 in case that bumps up. This knight can easily 1, 2 be on G5 hitting H7 again. Right? Tactics, remember, we're looking at specifics. Don't kid yourself. Black sees this. To put it here takes away a little bit of the pressure that white is putting onto black. So he wants to apply the pressure to the bishop, hoping, crossing his fingers, he'll go this way. You can't play chess that way. No. He keeps the diagonal. That's enough elaboration, except for what I want to show you. Oh, no, not yet. Oh, okay. Now, black will go B5. A nice space on the queen side that literally has nothing to do with what's happening. But it's a great space expansion, but there's nothing there. The queen side is too slow. White is already there, believe it or not. The attack is happening right now. And we'll see. We shall see this. So, essentially what I'm saying is, Rook C8 truly could have been considered. But again, he closed this off. He closed this off. Dang it. It kind of hurts him here. So the B5, he pushed the B5, and that doesn't really give him any dice in Las Vegas to gamble with. So he castles, and now the rook does come to E8. Now, this is black's reaction saying, okay, the king side's on. What this move does is it gives it gives the king an escape square. Because make no mistake about it, this battle is coming right here. I am so not kidding. This battle is coming right here. This battle is coming right here, and all of these squares are intimately connected with serious battle points. You can see the pieces pointing here. Just to read this board, look at it. Truly, it's a split even wedge all the way to this corner, isn't it? And black's wedge goes the wrong way. Because not only is there no coordinated pieces or pressure anymore because he released it by pressing that pawn, but there's literally nothing there to go get. There's nothing worth your effort there, right? So, holy cow, the fight's on and he's pushing his rook. Now, I have a variation here. No, not yet. The next one. The next one. So, and now, wow. The knight to f3 provokes the first exchange of pieces that is significant. Now he has a replacement for this. A very excellent replacement, man. Truly. And black has to take it. You gotta exchange the knight. It's too powerful. So, yes, from black's perspective, I'm eliminating an attacker. From white's perspective, he is eliminating a defender. Now, here's the difference. And I know you can see it. I like to spell these things out for my sake more than yours. You already see this, but this is for my sake, sincerely. There are a better coordinated and better number of pieces in an attack here than there is in a defense. Because the bishop makes all the difference. Donk. Donk. Please tell me you can see that. Seriously. The knight. Without question, you guys, the knight makes all the difference. This guy just simply doesn't have a lot, except the defense of that h7. So this guy is critically important as a defense piece. But obviously, this knight's more powerful. Please tell me you understand why. Please tell me you see that. Sincerely. The queen. Sincerely. There is absolutely no comparison between those two queens. This one is hands down much better spot. Much more effective in the attack than this one is on defense. Please tell me you can see that. Sincerely. So, white seems to have everything going for him. I really want to point this out to you so that you can understand reading the chessboard. In this instance, black has the most magnificent pawn chain, and it is detrimental. Thunk. Thunk. He's stuck. Black or white has absolutely nothing in his way. That's the difference. That's why you want to read the chessboard. Now, I put together, oh boy, here we go. Here's the chance for critics to eat me alive, baby. Yeah, come and get daddy. Come and get daddy. Instead of capturing, here's a variation. What if black was to do knight to e4? Okay, let's see what would happen. Then white would want to eliminate a potential defender. Knight takes d7. Of course, the queen is then going to take d7. And knight now can grab that magnificent outpost again. Now it's true, black has an outpost here. That's true. But look at the difference of what's going on. He's hitting the queen, so he bumps her back. And then F3, hitting the knight at the outpost. And the knight has to come back to F6, which is a good spot, no doubt. But you can see this really didn't accomplish much for black. So that helps us see how difficult this position is for black. I mean, it's serious. This pawn chain is not helping him. Sometimes it really does. In this instance, he really needs the center blasted open. His main error was closing the center off instead of trying to open it up. Get an open file for your rooks. Notice this. No open files. That is entirely in favor of white because of his development and the way his pieces are unobstructed on the diagonals, and the knights and the queen. If there were open files, black would have access to white. He literally doesn't. But white does have access to black. Tell me you can see that here. This is one of the most important parts of learning how to read the chessboard, is seeing things like that. So to get back to the point where black takes the knight on e5 and white responds by taking out one of the defenders and putting his other knight right back on that terrific outpost. There's no reason not to hold that outpost. It proves very helpful. True story. Now, this again, this H6 push. Now, white has such a powerful line here. And I know the knight is guarding the square. But black has such, or white, I mean, has such a powerful focus here that he's got to do something. He's starting to loosen up black's kingside simply because of the focus, like a magnifying glass in the sun. He's scorching that kingside. So this is critical. Now he's getting there. F3 actually doesn't weaken white's kingside. It supports his center, which is very interesting. Now, this is a great defensive move. A bishop and a knight, a rook somewhat, a queen can come through here. So the protection of the king, that's not bad, sincerely. Bumping the bishop down here and giving extra support to that G7 pawn. That's good stuff. Rook A to E1. No open file, but watch how this works. And now A5. Really, there's nothing else he can do to bring more support to that kingside. There's nowhere else to go. He better hope it works. Right? So why not expand a little more on the queen side? Perhaps something can come through this way, you know, around the block. Who knows? But you got to do something. And now for sure, here comes the attack. And notice how white chooses the attack. The trusty foot soldier pawn battering ram, beginning with G4. And now make no mistake about it, black's breaking out in a sweat. He puts G5, a good defensive move that at the same time weakens the squares around the king. And those become where white wants to focus. Dang it, man. He does hit the bishop. The bishop is not out of commission. He bumps down to G3. And the bishop comes up to g7. That was the other purpose that that pawn move produced. Not only did it stop the g4 pawn and back up the white bishop, but it gave the black bishop an opportunity to come up here and give more powerful support to h6 and the knight, the guardian of a very, very critical square. I know I'm overdoing this. I'm not going to apologize. You need to see the mechanics here. We are either going to produce attacks like this, or we are going to be handed them to us. And so this might help us understand how to do the mechanics. So that's how that works. It's a kingside attack. So none of this phases you. It's a kingside attack. Your center is absolutely secure, blocked. So none of that concerns you. It's a kingside attack. So everything you do focuses on establishing that attack. It makes sense, therefore, that you push f4. Not only does it hit the g-pawn and begin cracking the kingside open now, it is also producing an open file for the rook. Tell me you see why you understand almost of, oh, of course, yes, now it's time to push the f4. Absolutely. Truly. Now, bishop c8, see, he's got everything where it's going to be more or less for this attack. And the c8 idea, he knows something's going to happen here because this knight's hitting here and here. This is not a secure pawn by any means. Only the king is guarding it. There could be a knight sacrifice here. And so that's going to knock down the weakness of this. So it's the best he can do given the board position. So you can't fault the guy for that, but yeah. Oh, and I wanted to show you this too. I found another variation. Hold on. If instead of bishop c8, this will help show you why black's position is so bad. Let's say he pushes the pawn. Let's say black responds by taking the pawn instead of going to bishop c8. What happens? If he plays g takes f4, then, of course, the bishop's going to take f4. The rook is going to come to f8. Then he's going to push g5. And then the knight comes to h7. And this knight will take f7, further cracking the kingside open. And you say, well, wait a minute, the king will just take the knight. Yes, that's true. In this particular knight sacrifice, absolutely. Whoops, no, the king did not take it. The rook did. Sorry. The rook. Knight takes f7, the rook takes it, not the king, and then the g6. And white wins a piece. So that's why black could not respond by taking the pawn with a pawn. He had to bring as much, we don't know what good that'll do yet, but he tried to get a piece in there because he saw down the road he was going to lose a piece. So, to get back to the original position, back to the game, I noticed earlier I put the rook here. It wasn't there, it was to e5, or e1 I mean. Boy, if I keep messing up positions like that, I'm going to be known as the bumblebutt backyard professor. I already am, so. And I'll tell you what, I am perfectly normal. Normal. Boom. I promise. Okay, it's all together. All two of my brain cells. They're functioning well tonight. So we have the move bishop to c8, attempting to help as much as he can. There's pressure on the king side like crazy, and in fact, white cramps that pressure and he blows out the king side. Kablam! He detonates the dynamite. Now the response here is the h-pawn taking the g-pawn, and now we see, again, this is looking ominous. Thank goodness that knight is there protecting that square, and he is double protected by the bishop and the queen. So we have an interesting case here where there are two attackers. They must be connected, and we have a double protected defender. What is white to do? How is he going to get to this king? Oh, and before I show you this, I want to show you yet another variation. This will show you how precarious this is for black. If instead of taking the pawn, black would have played knight h7, here's what could have happened, because then the bishop's going to take h7 check. Absolutely so. And when he does so, the king is going to have to take h7, and then the rook comes up to f7 using his open file, and then the queen takes g5, so now she enters into the defense, but it's not enough. Bishop comes to f4, a wickedly powerful move. It's so powerful, in fact, the queen has to take it. So he gets rid of the queen. The pawn will take the queen, of course. And now black can continue trying to save the game with a4. And then queen is going to come up here to a5. There's not a whole lot left for him to do. King will go to h8. Rook takes the g7. Bam! Get rid of another defender. And you say, doesn't that leave the rook for the king? Yes, it does. The king will take the rook, of course. So it's getting whittled down. However, there's a problem. Queen gets to go to g6. King comes over here to f8. And queen, of course, goes to f7, checkmate. This helps illustrate the precariousness of black's position, doesn't it? That's one variation I'm showing you. I'll be right back with the main game. And so in the game, black responded with the h-pawn taking the g-pawn. And we were showing you the idea here. Here is the brilliant move that white came up with. He's stymied at this point to get in here because of the double protected knight. So what do you do in a kingside attack? You throw everything you have at it. Watch this. Rook takes knight. Fantastic. Yes, he's down the exchange, but who cares? He's going to win the game. This does allow the queen into the defense, however, but look at the difference. It's true, she is the most powerful piece on the board, but now h7 is open. The knight guarding it is gone. The queen has replaced it. So even though she's more powerful than the knight in this position, she's literally useless. This is a very important thing to recognize if you're ever in this position. This is great stuff. And I do want to show you this. If black responded by taking it with the bishop instead of the queen, then we still have queen h7, king f8, queen takes f7, checkmate. That's how close this game is, truly. So whether you take it with the bishop or the queen, I don't think black has much of a chance. So the queen takes it with f6. And the queen now comes to h7. Definitely check. King comes to f8. And here, the second rook comes into play and comes to f1. And it's here that black resigned. Now, I asked myself, what happens if the queen bumped down to e7? Then the knight's going to go to g6, check, mate. Because the pawn is pinned to the king by the rook, so it can't take that knight. So it's not going to help him to move the queen. So he resigned. But wait, what would happen if the queen came to here to exchange queens? Obviously, the queen's not going to go here. The knight will just take the queen, right? And it's still checkmate, right? But what happens if he tries to force a swap of queens? Then the rook simply delivers the checkmate. So black's in trouble. Now there was one last way, and I worked out this variation with the help of one of my chess apps. I didn't come up with all of this, but I did a little bit. What happens? It's a desperado move. Yes, you're trying to save the game. It's a must-win game, so you have to do everything you can. Moving the queen out of danger isn't going to help, so the best you can do is take the rook, right? Well, the king takes the queen. Duh. Let's see what happens after this. Rook will go to e7. Then knight comes up to c6. The rook wants to protect the back rank as much as possible, right? Then the rook will come to d7 because he doesn't want to be taken by the knight. And then the knight comes down here to b8 to take the rook. And you go, what? Remember, the bishop's protecting the knight. So what happens is he gains an exchange. The rook takes the knight, and the bishop takes the rook. Now what does black do? f6, supports the pawn, opens up the king hopefully a little bit, even though that's not going to amount to a whole lot. King comes to e2. King comes up to f7. They're now trying to get to the center. Although queen does come to g6, she's supported by the bishop, and it bumps the king back to f8. And then, where am I? Come on, king f8. And then e4, hitting the center. And what this will do is the d will take the e4. It's ironic that now the center breaks through, and black needed it broken through a long time ago to save his game. Instead, he closed it. Now white's the one opening it. Isn't that interesting? And then the bishop takes e4, centralizing the bishop, giving it all kinds of beautiful leeway power on the open board. Now he finally gets to the queen side. Let's see if he can do anything with it. But before he does, bishop's going to go to c6. So again, it's the power of his pieces centralizing and moving them all into places where they do the maximum damage. That stops the queenside attack. Isn't that interesting? Now, if the rook at this point goes to e7, then he's just skewered, right? So that's not a good option. If the rook comes to f7, the bishop can still come up and go check, right? King will go to g8. Bishop will come to e4. Now you can see the mating net working around the black king, can't you? f5 can give him a little breathing room and disconnect the queen from the bishop. So this might work, except that g takes f5. Although that puts his pawn between his queen and his bishop. We're not done yet. Now rook comes to f6, directly challenging the queen. And queen simply goes to e8. Check. The king will stay put and the bishop goes to f8. Queen will take the bishop another piece down. E will take f5. Bishop goes to d5, check. King comes up to g7. Bishop comes to e5, skewering the rook to the king. Bishop will go to e7. Queen will come over here to g8, check. King has to bounce over here to h6. Queen comes to h8, check. King comes back over to g6. Then white will push h4. Rook comes to e6. Bishop will take the e6. G will take the h4. Queen will come to g7, check. King will go to h5. And bishop will go, whoops,